Let's be super practical here. What are some of your day game openers? And let's just first go through a little bit of day game stuff. You know, if you're out doing groceries, like maybe that's Ross's thing, or if you just want to haunt a park in Manhattan or something like that. What are your day game openers? After we go through that, feel free to just drop any other lines like Ryan was mentioning, and X Social was also talking about some particular lines. Now is the segment I would love to go through people's lines. Let's use this as an opportunity to give people a lot of ideas. And it's not about the lines. Feel free to add in context if you will, but people are low on ideas and we got to inspire them. Who wants to go first?
I'll go with this one because day game is my specialty.
Go ahead.
So before I give you the line, there's some principles involved. One of the principles is to admit your intent and to own what you do. When you're doing pickup, you cannot apologize for what you do. You have to be all in, 100%, play big. Never, you can appear to apologize, but you don't. And you have to do what I call own the cheese. And I've found if you use laughter and then state your intent behind the laughter, it's very powerful. If all you use is laughter, and that's continuously what you do, you come off as a clown and you drop people's comfort goes away. They don't want to talk to you. So I'll do something like this. First, I do a pre-opener. A pre-opener is just designed to get the first initial eye contact and to demonstrate instantly she can evaluate whether you're safe or not. So if I'm in a grocery store, I'll say something like, excuse me, and I'll wait for her to give me eye contact. I'll say, do you mind if I reach into your space to grab the avocados? And she'll say, sure. And I'll say, excuse me again, but I've got to ask, you don't work for the Department of Defense, do you? She looks puzzled and she'll say, no. Why do you ask? I said, because your eyes are weapons of mass distraction. Now, that gets a huge laugh, 9 out of 10, but I don't leave it there. I do not leave it there. I will say, okay, that was really cheesy. But as soon as I saw you, I thought she cares deeply about other people, but she doesn't give a F about what other people think about her. If you don't talk to her for a minute, you'll kick yourself in the ass for the next 6 weeks. I'm Paul. Paul's my real name. And I shut up and I let her have a response. And usually they're blown away. They're blown away by the fact that I've demonstrated balls just by doing it, that I'm vulnerable by revealing my intent. And it's also a deep compliment. No woman has ever heard that compliment before, that she cares deeply about others, but she doesn't give a fuck about, I don't say fuck. I say, you don't give a F about what other people think about you. And even if it's not true, they want to believe it's true. I very seldom have had that anything other than, wow, that's the most amazing thing anyone has ever said about me. And then we start the conversation. That's how I do it. I use humor. I combine it with balls and admitting, getting rapport by saying, okay, that was cheesy, because that's pretty much what she's almost always thinking. So it's a lot being done very quickly in a short amount of time. I guess some people would say demonstrating value. I don't think about it that way, but that's what I do, or some variation thereof. But I use laughter in a strategic way. And also, as our friend here, our young Asian friend would say, laughter gives everyone a hit of dopamine, serotonin. What else? What other chemicals are released in the brain?
Okay,
Oxytocin?
so okay, based on laughter, I mean, we're talking about connection here, or
Yes.
like attraction-based connection. That is dopamine, endorphins, serotonin, and part of it, not that much in the beginning, is oxytocin, but then you have to be in the conversation itself. So
Yes.
it's mainly endorphins and dopamines we're talking about when it comes to laughter.
Yeah.
Mostly dopamine, if they have that kind of feeling. Yeah.
That's what I would do.
Alrighty.
Um,
Throw in your openers.
sure. Here's the best opener ever, but it only works if you have a dog. You go up to a girl and you say, "Hey, I thought my dog thought you were really cute, and he wanted me to meet you." Pretty much works every time. But again, you need a dog for that. But I think dogs are awesome, so everyone should have a dog anyway. Okay, that probably isn't going to work for most guys who don't have animals. So another good one is second best, I would say, is observational openers. So, like for example, if I can kind of go off what Ross said, actually, if you make eye contact with a girl just for a few seconds, you can go up to her and say, "Hey, I think we just had a moment right there." That's a good one that will work right there. Another one is just you can just observe her outfit. So for example, it's quite often girls will wear like all black or all white. I'd be like, "Ooh, I like the all black look. You look like a sexy cat burglar or something like that." So observational stuff is good. If you can't think of anything, a safe one is, hey, hey, I know this is really random, but I thought you were cute and you want to say hi. That one works quite well. If you're at a grocery store, my favorite one at grocery stores is to, if a girl's like, it looks like she's getting something or she's looking for something. Ooh, don't get that. Pause. She'll be like, oh, why not? I'm like, oh, it's the worst. She'd be like, really? And then you can just say, no, I'm just kidding. I just want to meet you. That usually works quite well because you kind of elicit a strong reaction. But yeah, those are ones off the top of my head.
It's good shit. I mean, I basically it's funny because I don't call it day game, but I just like when I just holler at a woman, I go very direct, and a lot of my conversation is very sexual. So what I do is that I try to see her, well, basically I see her response based off of me being sexual. So it'll be something simple like if I'm in the street or at a coffee shop or whatever, and I see a girl, and I'll just usually say, "Hey, how you doing?" Right, and then if she responds, she's like, "Oh, I'm good. How you doing or whatever." I introduce myself. I say, "My name is Locario. What's your name?" Stacy. Like, Stacy, nice to meet you. You're looking really sexy in that dress you got on, right? So I'm always saying sexy, and I'm always flirting, right? And then what I say is, I say, "Listen, take your phone out." And I was like, "I want you to put in my number. I want you to call me tonight. And when we get together again, I want to do this, this, and that." And it's usually something of, we're going to get a drink, then I'm going to go back to my place. So I say everything that I want to happen before we even get the information. So I say all this stuff, then I say, put the number in the phone. So usually one of two things happens. One, the girl is showing me off rip that she's not down. So then I don't even tell her to take out the phone and put in a number. I just tell her to have a nice day. But two, if she's flirting back with me, or she's blushing, or she's saying, "Oh, I think you're cute too," or whatever it is, then I say, put the number in the phone, hit me up, and then we're going to do this on this day. So that's basically how I do it. And the reason why I'm doing it on a sexual thing is because I'm very direct with it, because I only want to deal with women who is showing sexual interest from the jump. I don't want to deal with women who could be just talking to me because I'm talking to them, or talking to me because they expect me to take them dinner, or talking to me because, for any other reason. So that's basically how I sort of weed out, what I'm saying, the ones that actually are interested in that versus interested in some other things. You see what I'm saying?
Lucario, you
Damn,
can just
that
say,
is.
I'm not gonna buy you food and I am interested in fucking you, and then that takes care of that.
Basically.
And Lucario doesn't call himself a pickup artist. Right, right.
Oh, yeah.
No, that's funny. I was gonna say about that because he said he doesn't call it day game. You know how many African guys I seen like in the field, like, dude, are you a pickup artist? You doing night game? And they were like, what the hell is that? They're just Africans doing their thing.
That's Nigerians are all about that. If a Nigerian like sees you talking to a girl, he'd be like, "My friend, come over here, come over here, come over here, come over here." He's like, "You like that girl?" You're like, "Yeah,
It's
yeah,
in the
she's cute." He's like,
DNA.
you got her number? Yeah, yeah. You gonna fuck her? I don't know. Hopefully, yeah. Good, 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 good. Yeah.
That's
I'll add something really quick. I wanted to say first, along the lines of what Ross is talking about here, a lot of the times, and I also don't call it day game, but I only do game in the day as I'm going about my day, and so I kind of oscillate between two sort of modes. One is the Lucario sort of idea where I just straight up sexual, damn girl. She's like, what? And it's like that behind, like, holy shit, like what's going on here? Straight up about her body, straight up about, I'll even say like that dump truck, like things like this, just because right away. And I'm concerned with, approaching like this in certain environments. And actually I do approach like that most personally when I'm in New York City, which is the closest city to where I am. So I think there's a certain vibe depending on the city you're in and like the type of person you approach. So now with relation to what Ross said, which is what I typically would go with, is something more like, and I'll just say when I approach, when it comes time to like admit why it is that I've approached, I'll use the compliment. You carry yourself so well. I like the way you carry yourself. You carry yourself so well. So it's because I find too often that guys will ask me like, well, what Because it would be great to have a unique, like I like your eyes because they're this, if you really meant it. But you won't know until you're actually knowing the person that that's something special about them, usually. But there's one thing that every woman's proud of, even again, just like Ross, even if she's not doing it at that moment. And it's something about the way that she's perceived and the way that she's carrying herself. And so, and again, it goes without saying that, or maybe I guess I need to say it. When I'm approaching with the other method, the yo, damn girl, your butt's looking great, I'm kind of approaching a different quality relationship or a different framework for the relationship than when I'm asking, like, are you single? Why am I asking? Because the way you carry yourself. And so and now I'm more interested in the latter. And so now I'm more interested in building relationships off of that framework.
You should try
I
that
just
with
want
an
to add,
Asian girl who has no ass and see how she responds.
Well,
I
I lived
just
in
want to
China.
add,
Yo, I lived in China for 6 years. And
oh,
so
wow.
I was out there studying meditation and working at a university. And there were many times where I, in the beginning, got caught up in that framework that I had created for myself. And like I'd said before, we kind of got into the heat of this at the very start of our conversation. It's worth it to to have some consistency and try on a certain approach. Again, to have the consistency to see it through. And then when you're feeling a different mode in you or a different sort of like curiosity or a mode to engage with, to try that on. And so, yeah, pretty quickly I kind of got out of canned game when I started to travel more and realized that I'd gotten into canned game.
Damn girl, that ass looks like it belongs to the CCP.
I would not try any of that type of approach in Northern California
Right.
because it is such an environment of victimhood, and you're violating my safe zone, and what a microaggression. So just be aware of the culture of where you're located.
Definitely.
I'm just saying that. And further, speaking to your point, sir, uh, a line I've been teaching since 1995 is you carry yourself with discipline and elegance. It's very rare. Word for word, that's a line I've used and have taught my students to use. And by the way, I want to say something to everyone watching. No matter whose advice you follow, I want to encourage you, let your bold actions in the world determine for you what you can really do. If you let your internal dialogue be the architect of your life, you will live a small life that you tolerate rather than a huge life that you celebrate. So take everyone's advice here into account and follow what makes sense to you. But the key word is let your actions in the world with repeated experiments shape who you are and shape your world. Do not let your internal dialogue and all the what if it doesn't and blah, blah, blah in your head be the architect of your life, because you will live a tiny life and no one will really want to connect with you, and they certainly won't want to follow you, and you will not be anyone's emotional leader. And emotional leadership, being a leader in the connection, is a huge step in becoming someone who's really successful with women in any area of life. Just had to add that.
Interesting. Similar to what Ryan was talking about earlier, the are you single question, not really a line, but a line still. One thing I like to say is, how's your love life? People always say like, how are you? And those questions are fucking boring to me and very unappealing. And everyone says the same stuff, and it's very uninspiring. But by asking how's your love life, at least you get a glimpse into, like, even with female friends, you can ask this. With colleagues, you can ask this. You can ask anyone this kind of question. Maybe don't ask your grandmother or something like that. That's my only little context there. But it's a much easier way to find out if someone is taken, or just to get a glimpse into how they're going about their dating. Are they seeing someone in an informal way? It's super helpful. Anyway, any more lines? Let's just throw on this giant fire as many lines as possible.
Oh,
Here's a
You
couple
won't Subway
I'm sorry,
because
here's
James.
you're
a
giving
couple
me a foot
for
long.
like night game. Like I don't primarily do like day game, but I do like night game. So here's like two. They're more like direct style. Now, out here in Los Angeles, if I see a girl that's, tall, attractive, that gets me going. So I want to use that emotion. And then I'll go up to her like, you are tall and gorgeous. I fucking love you. Right. And like this works on like the 6 foot tall girls. And I'm like 5'5". So it tends to get like a very strong reaction from them. Because they're not gonna get hit on by like a short Asian dude all that often. So I, definitely, am
Most of the time, it'll be a short Indian dude.
And the other one I like to use is "You are fucking beautiful" or "You are fucking adorable." So those are like my two go-tos when I'm out at nighttime.
Oh, damn.
I'll jump in. So, like a lot of the guys have said, I think it's important when you're approaching during the daytime, especially depending on the scenario, to sort of state your intention. What are you doing talking to her randomly during the day? That being said, I do that as sort of my last resort. I'm a big fan of trying to come up with a spontaneous opener in the moment that comes to me, but I have my default openers that I can go back to if I'm making excuses or if I don't see a way in. And I typically do not comment on the woman's physical beauty. I will comment on her energy. So I'll say that I was drawn to her. And then I'll say, what is that? Where does that come from? I don't know. Anyway, I'm Erik. So I'll do kind of a similar direct opener, but rather than saying I had to come over here because you're adorable or because you're cute, the same day game opener that's been around, right, since the mid 2000s that we've all heard a million times, that Ross has taken to a more sophisticated level. That's probably the most sophisticated spin of the traditional day game opener that I've seen. That was a good one. And then Locario, I respect the direct approach and the super sexual approach, but I've also found that you're forcing the woman to choose on the spot if she's attracted to you or not. I'm more about, let me get my foot in the door, demonstrate some personality, then I make her choose. Because when you put someone on the spot, there may be quite a few women that you could have a connection with, but it's like, you know what I mean? The whole boiling the frog analogy that Ross, I'm going to give you props for that one back in the 90s, right? That analogy has been around for a while, right? Is that where it came from? Was that written in your book? Anyway,
No, but when you said I've been around a long time, this is my first book.
So anyway, to summarize, I go spontaneous during the day. Funny, Alex, I've actually used the same thing in the grocery store. Like, oh, you don't want to get that. That's loaded with chemical additives or something. And it could be like an apple. It could be an organic apple, And she's like, really? Like,
Don't
but
get
anyway,
that. That's vegan.
I want to be spontaneous as much as
Don't
possible.
get that. That's for homosexuals.
I want to be spontaneous, but then I have my default openers if I have to go to them. But I typically leave looks out of it. I comment on her energy, and I typically don't sexualize too quickly. Not because I'm trying to be phony, but I want to create a genuine connection, and I want to perform my song before I ask her if she likes it and she wants to hear more. I want to give her a sample of the album before I ask her if she wants to buy the whole thing.
Anyway, Erik, are those Kurt Cobain's clothes?
I basically agree with everything Erik said. Yeah.
What's that?
I said I basically agree with everything you said. I don't like the idea of going too physical too fast because I feel like that can turn some girls off. It's very polarizing. The girls that will respond positively to that are going to be basically a done deal, but there's going to be a lot of maybe girls that you will turn off by going too physical too fast. I think that compliments should be generally not super obvious ones. So if a girl has a big ass, like she'll always get compliments on her ass.
I'll be right back.
So I would go with something a little bit different than that. But yeah, other than that, I agree.
I think that's basically why I do it, because what it is that, see, the thing is, you don't really turn a woman off. She just was not really that into you. You see what I'm saying? So a lot of times what happens is that it's like you'll waste time with women who either you needed to persuade them more, or you're dealing with women who have like medium or low interest. So what I'm doing is that I'm finding the women who have high interest and that I'm dealing with them. And the women who have medium or low interest, I kind of like toss them to this, like I just eliminate them immediately. Because what happens is that if I have to persuade too much or try to convince the girl, then what happens is that I'm putting in more work versus having a woman who's highly interested and then keeping and maintaining that interest versus finding a girl who's kind of lukewarm about it and then having her to like become more interested as I'm going along. You see what I'm saying? So it just all depends on like your agenda and I think also time. Because what happens, I used to be a little bit more laid back about it, but then what I would do is I would attract women who were more like attention whorish type of thing, where they would show me interest, but it wasn't really interest in me sexually. It was interest in, oh yeah, let's hang out, let's, like go get a drink, let's talk and all this. But then when it came down to sex, you know what I'm saying? It was like, oh, well, I'm not really that interested in you sexually, which is why it's not going to happen. Or, hey, let's just be friends. Or, hey, so I was like, let's eliminate all that and just get straight to, is this woman actually showing that interest now? Or is she not? And usually if she's not, that means that she's not really highly interested. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I
For
mean,
sure. And
depends on where
it's a style of game that works. And I think somebody like you who's very calibrated and has been doing this a while, you can pull it off, right? I do think though, to any guys that are listening, that do not have proficiency, I think it's better to learn to play solid game. And then after you get some proficiency, then you can start to transition to bolder, more sexualized conversations. I don't disagree. You know what I mean? It's not like I can disagree with something you're saying. I just personally think that it's a high octane style that burns through a bunch of good opportunities.
It's all context
had you played solid game.
It's like it's all context specific because what he's talking about is he's just rapidly screening, right? And so he's not wasting a lot of time. So, you only need like one girl that says like, yeah, I'm down, right? And then like, okay, that's all the experience like even a newbie needs, right? If you find one girl. But again, it's context specific, whether a noob or someone more intermediate. He's talking about his experience, his game, his sexual market value, and I can absolutely see why like something that would work for him. And
it's like the 7-hour rule, right? Like everybody hates on mystery for the 7-hour rule. They're like, I pull women in 2 hours and 1 hour and whatever. The 7-hour rule is the idea that we play solid game and we make the woman really want sex before we engage in sex, as opposed to let's see how fast I can escalate this, right? I've seen mystery pull chicks in less than 7 hours, right? So it's not a rule, it's a general guideline for building a strong skill set. And sometimes I think right now, in particular in the pickup scene, the focus is on being super direct, making the woman decide on the spot whether she wants to hear your whole album without even giving her a sample of the album. It's very direct. It's all about fast escalation. And I think playing solid game is a much more sustainable style, generally, if I'm going to generalize.
The question is where and when do you want to screen? So there's like two extremes, right? One extreme is you screen very aggressively right off the bat, and then you screen out a lot of girls. Some of them might be girls who've been interested, but the girls whose numbers you do get are going to be very down. The other extreme is that you save all the screening for the end, right? And then the problem with that is you're going to be finding, like Locario says, a lot of girls are like, oh, I was just looking for a friend. I personally find that the best approach is somewhere in the middle, where you screen progressively throughout the interaction with small compliance jumps. So for example, that could be opening her, relatively indirect, and then flirting with her a little bit, saying that you guys can go on a date now that you're just grabbing her number, and then maybe flirting with her over text and then inviting her straight to your place. So you're progressively screening throughout the process. I think that's the best balance between wasting time and also maximizing the amount of girls you get. But yeah, there's different styles. I will say one thing though about Locario's style is that I think it works for him because he's very confident. But I think that if you go that direct, you better be 100% confident, because if you're like 70-80% confident, you will probably get annihilated, because the girl will be like, excuse me, what do you say? And she can just sense that weakness, and if she senses that in you, that style is going to get you just rejected, right? So if you're going to go super direct, I think you have to be very confident in that and not have any shame around what you're doing.
Hey, I want to add to this that and I mentioned this before about Locario working out in New York City, and me spending my time there with that almost very similar, exact same approach, more or less. Being cosmopolitan, being like understanding different cultures, who you're speaking with, understanding different cities and the ways that their cultures are. Um, I mean, without that, you're going to get yourself in trouble just taking my advice and going up and being like, damn, girl, you got a dump truck. Like, that's not going to be a good. And, Ross already said, in certain places where there's a different culture, you're going to get called out immediately. And so in my hometown where I am now, 10,000 people, farm town, if I did that for a few weekends in a row, I would get run out of town. You know what I mean? And for good reason, right? Because that's just is a small town. Everyone knows each other. I don't want someone talking to my sister like that. So now in New York City, I mean, if you guys haven't been there, it's what you'd imagine. It's so fast paced. And there's just so many beautiful women. So it's very easy. And, they are getting catcalled and they are getting approached that way. So it's like, they are a little bit aware of it. And so when you have an approach like, hey, how you doing? They know what that means. So then the next line being, yeah, you got a dump truck. I'm trying to see what you're about. Now we're talking. And so I think I think the first thing that anyone needs to do, and this goes back to what Michael Lee was saying about empathy and curiosity, is to become sort of this global citizen, this worldly person. And it definitely helps to travel and to see different places. But there's so many other avenues to sort of develop that spirit.
Ryan, I have a perfect solution for you to adjust for your small town. Just say, looks like you have a nice farm truck, and that's going to be a lot more socially appropriate, Yeah.
Even better.
Yeah.
What a difference between New York and Los Angeles. Like one side can't handle it, the other side sees it every 5 minutes.
Truth be told,
Some
I've stayed in both. I lived in LA for a while. I grew up right next to New York. I used to go there. I wouldn't say there's a big difference actually between LA and New York in terms of like game. I do think there's a big difference between game in terms of like a small town and a city, but I didn't really find any big difference there.
On
Yeah,
the
let
topic
me.
of screening,
Go ahead,
on
Ross.
the topic of on the topic of screening, it begs the question, screening for what? Now, I've been doing hypnosis for 30 years. I know that word freaks people out, so you're entitled to have your impressions about what you mean about it. I'm screening first and foremost for focus. My learning, my lesson, my teaching is that focus is the currency of any kind of influence, whether it's persuasion, sales, seduction, any of it. I'm screening to see, do I have her focus? Is she exclusively focused on me? To what degree is she focused? Are her pupils dilating? Is her breathing pattern shifting? Because when I see that, I know that she's entrained, ENTRAINED. She's entrained with me and she's beyond rapport. And she can be very quickly moved from rapport into compliance. I don't mean compliance with cruelty. You can do compliance with compassion, which speaks tangentially to this whole 7-hour thing. If any sufficiently developed technology is indistinguishable from magic. If you only have a certain kind of magic, it probably does take 7 hours. You can, in a way that's not skipping over rapport and not skipping getting to know the person, not skipping comfort. If you know the magic of communication like this, you genuinely can do it with a genuine connection and real comfort in a matter of 2 hours. And
On average, though?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I know that seems impossible. I don't blame you for thinking it's impossible. I respect Erik and his system. Every system has my system has limitations. Speed seduction is very hard to learn. There's a steep learning curve. It's not for everyone. You have to be willing to learn a new language, but it brings things that other people would think are impossible and that cannot be done.
But let me just clarify real quick. So you believe that the average woman will have sex with a guy in 2 hours or less, the majority of
I
them.
would say within 2 to 3 hours, if I can answer, it's an intelligent question. It deserves a thorough answer. I believe within 2 to 3 hours, it can be done. That doesn't mean you have to have sex in that period of time. In fact, I don't recommend it because when the penis goes in, the crazy comes out. So I recommend you slow down the sale. The point
I assure you, I know that it can be done in 2 to 3 hours. But what I'm saying is, do you believe that the average everyday woman will have
yes,
sex with a
I
guy
not
in
only
2 to
believe
3
it,
hours?
I not only believe it, I know it to be the case.
Yeah, I completely agree with Ross. I would say 2 hours, maybe even like an hour and a half, depends on what city you're in, but 2, 3 hours average, not just to fuck a girl, but to actually build a sufficient connection that the experience is pleasurable for her and that she wants to see you again. I think that 2 hours average is just about right for the average girl. This only works if you have a good game, though. If you're like the average dude, then it'll probably take you longer because it takes you more time to escalate, more
Yeah.
time to build investment. But for a guy with a good game, yeah, absolutely 2 hours I think is fine. I think sometimes
But
I am admitting the average guy, if you, I don't know what you mean by average, but if you're not highly intelligent or at least beyond average intelligence, my system is shit. It's bullshit and it will not work. You have to be bright to grasp the principles of subconscious communication and to understand how and why they work and not just repeat my words and my language patterns. If you're not smart and if you're not willing to have the discipline to go up a steep learning curve, my work is bullshit and you should avoid it.
I'm not even talking about your system necessarily. When I say average guy, I mean like dude who doesn't know pickup, a guy who just lives his life. Maybe he slept with a few girls in the past, has a 9 to 5 job. That's what I mean when I say average guy.
Hey,
I,
what's
Ross, I
7
definitely
hour?
believe.
I'm confused.
Go ahead, Lucario.
Oh no, I was asking what's the 7 hour thing? What is that?
So this can I comment to Ross real quick, and then I'm gonna
Yeah,
go
go
to
ahead.
you.
Yeah.
So I just want to say really quick. First of all, Ross, I do believe that your stuff is extremely for high level intelligence material. I've written down more stuff from you than anybody else on this call so far. Focus is the currency of any kind of influence. It's money. But the only question that I have for you guys is it the style of game that you're running that's attracting a certain type of woman that's willing to have sex within 2 to 3 hours on average? Or is that on average, the majority of women will sleep with a guy in 2 to 3 hours? I'm not saying the majority of women wouldn't do it occasionally, but do the majority of women sleep with guys in 2 to 3 hours as their default? And then,
didn't say they
Yeah,
do. I
yeah,
said you can get them to the place
yeah.
where they're ready and willing to. I didn't say they necessarily will. And furthermore, we're using very loosely defined terms like average man, average woman. It's so loosely defined, it begins to lose all of its meaning. So let me drill down, get granular, and define what I mean. For me, I'm looking for someone who's reasonably intelligent, a woman, and therefore reasonably suggestible. By suggestible, I don't mean I put her to sleep and she obeys me. I mean that her unconscious mind is able to process ideas. It triggers her imagination, flows of feeling in her body, imagery in her mind, internal sound, and that depends largely on the skill level of the operator, as any hypnotic communication would. And I think in my experience and the experience of countless thousands of my students, remember, I've been doing this since 1988, actually, about 30 to 40% of the women do respond this way. That's not even the majority, but when they do, it's far less effort and far less work. But everyone's system works for them. I'm going to state it very clearly. Eric von Markovic is a genius and an original. I thoroughly respect him. I believe what he teaches works within the system that he teaches. I'm simply saying, if you're stuck in your own system, just like I can get stuck in my own system, my system is incomplete. It's subject to error. Everyone here, no matter how much they believe in what they do, and no matter how much results they produce for themselves and other people, are working within a system that is blind to its own errors and where it's incomplete, myself included. So that's all I want to say. Any model being presented here is just a model. I say this, I'm retired from teaching seminars now, but every seminar I always started by saying, nothing I'm teaching is true with a capital T. There's exceptions, it's incomplete, it's riddled with error, most likely, and it's only a model. It's a model that's worked for me. And if you use it as I teach it, it will tend to get you results it will get the results for you that it predicts far more often than not. I actually need to go. I'm tired and I have a coaching call I need to do with a client. I'm really happy to have had this honor. This is a level of intelligent exchange that the community deserves to hear. I really want to connect with you. I'm sorry, young man, to have you on my podcast. Ice, please arrange it. Erik, give my sincere regards and respects to Mystery.
Will do.
The guy's a genius, and I fully acknowledge him as that. I really enjoyed our discussion we had that Ice hosted. I hope to see him in person sometime. I know he has some kind of family down here in San Diego, so my treat, my honor to take him to dinner when he shows up.
I'll let him
what
know
about
he's
that
going to be in
intelligent
San Diego
exchange we
soon.
had on with Grace? Don't you think that tops that?
Say again?
What about that really intelligent exchange you had with Grace Thorpe? Don't you think that tops that?
Grace Thorpe is a pinhead. All right, guys, but she's in such a big train wreck. You have to look at her. You can't turn away. I've got to.
Thanks. Alrighty. Jesse,
I was just gonna. Can I add to that real quick? So me and Ross's systems are quite different, actually very different. But I do agree with his conclusion that 2-3 hours, even 2 hours, I would say, would be average. That a guy with good game can seduce most girls. I will agree that's not going to be so. Most girls are not sleeping with the average guy in 2-3 hours, right? But you don't really want to be like the average guy. The average guy is making a whole series of mistakes. The average guy is probably slightly overweight. The average guy probably doesn't make that much money. So you don't really want to be like the average guy. But if you have a good game, I think 2 hours is reasonable for relationship worthy girls. Like I'm looking at I'm on my 5th relationship right now. I've had 5 long-term relationships. If I look back at every single one of those relationships, I would say that altogether, probably took me 2 or 3 hours to sleep with a girl, and then I wound up dating her for a while. With my current girlfriend, it was probably, if you combine everything, probably around 3 hours. So yeah, that's just kind of my thoughts.
I appreciate that you guys, and I understand like there's like a 7 hour, I guess this is probably written, right? And so like I totally understand there's reasons behind all these notions of time, but like it seems to me to be deleterious and problematic to really extend that beyond like a very tight room of of a more deep intellectual conversation around this, because I'm afraid that you know if you think of the idea of a speed run, it seems like that's what guys are trying to get out. How much time, what's the least amount of time that I can spend to get laid? And I sympathize with that. I totally understand. I've been there and I've approached it that way. But
Have you ever heard of cryptocurrency? What's the quickest time I can become a millionaire? It's always that thing. We have Uber Eats, we have Amazon, we have all this stuff that is on demand because of our on-demand mindset, thanks to technology and how
what I mean to say
it.
is, Ice, what I mean to say though is more of it's almost like an autistic like lens to view it in. It's like we're looking at it in the lens of because I have many clients too, as I'm sure you all do, and they're saying to me things like, "Is it true that X coach can get me laid in 1 hour or in so many minutes, or do you believe that he did this in whoever it is, right?" And so it's like, and it's, of course I believe it in that sense, of course, because I've gotten laid on approaching a girl. I've stepped out of my apartment and I've said, "Hey, you want to come to my apartment?" and gotten laid. Like crazy stuff has happened. And so, but like that is a terrible, and again, maybe this is what the 7 hours is really trying to get at. It's more of just like I'm not sure. So maybe Erik here can give me more detail, but it seems to me it would make more sense about this is how long it takes for people to really get to know each other, right? Or begin to get to know each other even.
Well, it's you have to take it within context, right? Like Erik came up with it, and the fact that, let's say you meet someone for an hour, you at a club, whatever, you talk to them for an hour, maybe you go on a date with them. That's about 2 hours. You go on another date with them, 5 hours. Go on a third date with them, 7 hours. This is kind of like a counterbalance to the guys, the simps that would take girls out for like 5, 6, 7 dates. So if you add that all up, now you're talking about like 12 hours. So it's just like a counterbalance to that. Like it's been quantified, so it feels cold, right? But when you actually apply it to how like most normal guys do it, it's like 3 dates, like most girls are going to know if there's enough sexual chemistry to sleep with you. And 3 dates, that's 2 hours each, 1 hour, like when you approach them, that's roughly 7 hours.
And is
Okay,
that
so
what it,
the 7 hours is like from meeting to actual sex. Like it's saying that that's the average amount of time.
Yeah, the time you have spent with that person, assuming you're not doing like rapid fire, like screening game like that you do. This is the typical I meet the girl and then I go on a couple dates with her,
Right.
roughly corresponds to that 7 hours.
so Locario, let me give you a quick primary because I want to let you talk, man. You've been doing a good job just listening, but I want to hear what you have to say, man. The 7 hour rule popularized by Erik von Markovik, not Erik Carlberg, Erik von Markovik, mystery,
Right.
came up with the 7 hour rule that when he runs the M3 model, which is a way to compartmentalize the game, he's found that when he runs his style of game, it takes an average of 7 hours from meet to beginning the sexual relationship. It can be as soon as 4 hours, or it can be as long as 10 hours on average, with the middle being 7 hours. So that's the 7 hour rule.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Your
Well, so
thoughts?
so bear in mind, like a lot of coaches out there, especially no matter what their level is, there is the incentive all the time to like everyone pays attention to their story where they pulled in 2 hours. Like I could say, for example, I didn't pull a goal in 30 minutes, she pulled me in 30 minutes. And we all got these kinds of crazy experiences. Like I agree with what Alex was saying. He was saying, yeah, like two hours is not impossible, even if you're a little bit intermediate or a little bit more than a little bit intermediate at game. 2, 3, 4 hours can happen provided that you're doing game consistently pretty easily. Still, if you're early into the whole game thing, but still, it's let's not really like nitpick on the number of hours it takes and all that
I
stuff.
think I
But
think
any final comments on it?
yeah,
Okay, let me. Okay, you go ahead first.
I was gonna say this real quick 'cause I kind of see what they're saying because like I think what JT Tran was saying is that like yeah, if the guy meets the girl, they go on a few dates, that's gonna equal to about the amount of time that'll probably get to that point. The only issue I would have with it is that based on how you come at the girl is gonna sort of dictate her perspective of how she sees you also. So this is why the reason why I even go up to girls like and make it sexual is because I don't want them to think I'm trying to like have a relationship with them now. Like I'm like, we're just gonna hook up. And then maybe later on down the line, if I like you, then we could keep it going and whatever. And so what happens is that if you're going out on a date and 3, 4 dates, then you have sex, in her mind, she sees you as maybe boyfriend material. And so sort of what I'm saying is you got to be careful of how you're coming at a woman because then her perception of how she thinks the situation is going to cause some type of entitlement that she's going to have based on the perception she has of you. Now, if you want a girl as your girlfriend, then hey, that makes sense to go down that route. But if you're like, hey, I just want to hook up, but you're going on 3 or 4 dates, and then you're just like, I want to get to the sex, and then you get to the sex, and then she's expecting to keep dating you, you're just trying to fuck her, that's going to cause drama. You see what I'm saying? So I guess it all depends on how you want to go and which direction you want to really go into it. You see what I'm saying?
But the question, I guess, too, is do you believe that the majority of women will have sex in 2 to 3 hour experience? I've found that there are many women that will sleep with a guy within 2 to 3 hours. There are many women that will do that more than once in their life. But I believe that the majority of women don't like sleeping with guys within 2 hours. I think the majority of them prefer a little bit more of a drawn out love story, a little bit more romance without leading them on, as you said. So I believe that what you guys that are big on the fast escalation, I believe you get very good at it because you develop a keen eye for certain types of women. You set frames early on, you sexually prime, you set sexual frames early, you sexualize, even the sub communication is probably very sexual. So you may be on average pulling women in 2 to 3 hours, but you may be discarding the failures as anomalous when in fact you've just highly curated your style of game. That's why I'm a little bit more of a proponent of solid game. I don't necessarily believe the 7 hour rule is it's exactly 7 hours, but the idea behind it is for guys to slow things down, draw it out a little bit more.
Yeah, so to respond to that real quick, so I would say that a good majority of women will sleep with guys quickly, even before 2 hours. It could be an hour, it could be half an hour. Majority of women will do that if they find men who are worth doing it with. So like if a woman finds 5 guys in a row that she's that highly sexually attracted to, she will sleep with them in an hour if the circumstances cause that to happen. So what I'm saying is that a good majority of women won't sleep with guys that quickly because a good majority of women don't are not highly sexually attracted to most guys. You see what I'm saying? It's almost like if a woman says, "Hey, how many guys are interested in long-term relationships?" Most women are like, "Oh, all these guys just want to fuck. They don't want a long-term relationship." But if a man found a woman who was worth it, he'd get into a long-term relationship with her. So it's like it's not necessarily the thing. It's that is this particular person in front of me worth doing that particular activity? So you see what I'm saying?
Let
And
me,
then, and to your
let's
point
let's draw
too,
this
uh,
to an end here.
uh,
Although I will
wait,
say,
guys, can I
Eric,
just make one last point? Or do you really want to move on?
no, I'm gonna
Okay,
say
fine.
no.
next.
I'm gonna be mean.
Okay, go for it.
Eric did tell me maybe a week ago or something. Maybe there is an opportunity to have a debate for guys who are into solid game, like Eric is, and guys who are into fast game, let's say. If you're interested in that, just send me a message after and we can arrange that.
I'm
But
down.
let's move
I'm
on
down.
to shutting this conversation down.